This is your pelvic floor release workout. So it's not a full follow along. I'm going to show you a couple of different techniques and then you can decide which one works best for you and then implement it into your day. I prefer doing this before my workout because especially if I'm super compressed in the back, then I might not be able to get into a good squat or I might not be able to get into a good hip hinge and things like that. So we want to work on releasing the muscles and then, getting that length within the muscles and then we can go into our workouts having a better range of motion. All right, so the first step is to release the pelvic floor internally. If you have an internal pelvic floor therapist that you can see, wonderful option. But if you don't have that, then we can work on externally releasing of the pelvic floor. So I've got these therapy balls that what I'll do is I'll place it right underneath my sits bones here and I'll place it on the inside. So we don't ever want to roll on the bones, but we want to roll just on the muscles outside of the bone. And so what you can do is you can roll front to back or side to side. And what you want to find is any sticky spot that you might feel in your body. And if it feels okay for you, you want to think about sitting into that spot and holding that pressure there and think about breathing into that spot. So let me show you what I mean by that. So of course I'm going to sit on something. I've got my bench here, which is going to be super helpful for feeling that sensation. So I'm going to separate my cheeks. I'm going to place the ball right on the inside of my sits bones. Again, I'm going to roll front to back and then side to side. Now you can also do this on the floor, but it helps with a bench or a chair to kind of really have a little bit more control in this position. All right. So again, I'm just rolling front to back and then I can roll side to side. And then if you find a sticky spot, like I have a sticky spot right here, I want to think about just holding the position and thinking about breathing into that spot and just allowing the muscle kind of to relax and melt over it. So if this is my muscle, it's restricted. And as I sit here and breathe into it, then I want to think about it kind of melting over the ball and relaxing. So it's letting go. And when we really focus on our breath in this position, that it calms our nervous system down, but then it also helps us to just kind of relax and let go over the ball. Now, if the ball is just way too much and you're just you have a lot of compression there, or it just really does not feel good, you can always use a foam roller instead. And so I like to come onto the foam roller and I'm going to place my one foot on top of the other. And so same idea, I'm just going to roll on the foam roller back to front. And again, if I find a sticky spot, I might sit here and breathe into that spot and let the muscle melt over the foam roller in this position. You're not going to be able to get into it as deep in this position, but it's an option for somebody who just can't, who has just way too much tightness and it's too uncomfortable with the ball. You can also change the ball as well. So the bigger the ball, it might be a little bit easier. It might be a little bit squishier and not as hard. So try out different balls that might feel best for you. So again, we want to basically loosen and get the stuck fascia unstuck. Once we've done that, then we're going to go into some breathing exercises. So I'm going to show you a couple different breathing exercises that I personally love, and I'm going to show you some variations of each exercise. So the first exercise is a deep squat hold. So I have my bike here as something sturdy to hold on to. And so very important that my ankles are nice and relaxed here. We really want the whole body to just be relaxed as I'm holding on in this position. Okay, so the goal here is to compress the front, because if we have compression in one area, then we can get the breath into the other areas. So if you have compression in your back, in your upper thoracic spine, and compression into your pelvic floor, then we want to focus on compressing the front so our breath is forced into those spots. So that's why we compress the front to get the breath into the back. So I'm going to just inhale through the nose, allowing that expansion, like that 360-degree pattern, allowing the breath to fully expand, allowing the diaphragm to fully expand, and getting the breath into my back and then down into my pelvic floor. And I want when I think about my pelvic floor opening up like a flower here. And then as I exhale, it's just a gentle exhale from the mouth. So I inhale through the nose and exhale from the mouth. So I'm keeping my mouth nice and open. I'm keeping it nice and relaxed, okay? Now, a lot of women will, if they do have prolapse, will feel like this is making their symptoms a little bit worse when it comes to prolapse. So you can also use a foam roller to sit on instead. Okay, so this would help support the sensation of your prolapse, but we're still compressing the front. I'm still bringing my knees in towards my chest. I'm going to wrap my arms around so that I can really compress a little bit more. And this is still going to allow the breath to go into the thoracic spine as well as into the back pelvic floor. So this would just be a variation of that deep squat. All right, so that is breathing option number 1. Breathing option number 2 is by grabbing a foam roller. And this position, I'm sorry, not a foam roller, a yoga block. This position would actually be really good for somebody who has prolapse, because when we lift our hips up above our knees, this can help to pull some tissues back into the places that they need to go. And so when you come into this position, you can come down onto your elbows. And I want you to think about pressing your elbows into the mat to push the body away. You want to think about spreading the shoulder blades, because if we have compression in the back pelvic floor, we most likely have compression in that upper thoracic spine here. And so we want to just press the elbows into the mat to push the body away. My knees are pressing into the yoga block, and I have a slight round through my spine here. And I want to think that as I inhale, again, I'm opening up this area like a flower. You can also think about blooming from your butthole and that opening up as well. So if you have constipation or you have to force your gas out, then I really want you to focus on that area very particularly, because that could be the reason that you have prolapse symptoms, or it could be the reason why you can't hinge correctly or you can't squat. All of these things, we need to break through these barriers. Okay, so again, same thing. I'm in this position and I want to inhale through the nose, allowing the expansion all up in these areas. And if you need to, you could think about engaging your core to help compress the abdomen so that more of the breath goes into the back. All right, and then as I exhale, again, it's going to be a gentle exhale from the mouth. So inhale and then exhale. So you should get some engagement from those lower abdominals. And since we're talking about back pelvic floor tightness, it's okay because our front pelvic floor might turn on just a tad bit, which is perfectly fine, because if we have back pelvic floor tightness, then that front pelvic floor probably needs some good strengthening here. So again, this position is really good for somebody who has prolapse and that can lift the knees up above the hips, which can kind of pull that prolapse back and in, opening up through the back, but engaging into the front of the pelvic floor. All right, and then our final option for breathing. So again, you're going to release the tight muscles, and then you're going to go into one of these exercises, breathing exercises. You can choose one, or you can do all of them. Anywhere from 5 to 10 breaths, 2 to 3 rounds. So you essentially could do each exercise one time through and get a really good release within the pelvic floor. Okay, the final one, you're going to use another foam block, and I'm typically more tight on my left side, so this would be really good for me to incorporate on my left side. But you can try it on both sides as well. If you don't know which side you're tighter on, which is normal, very common, then you can do both sides, maybe 5 breaths on each side. All right, so you're going to come into a kneeling position. You're going to place your knee on the block. Okay, so I'm just going to place it here, and then my heel is almost touching, well, it is touching that back knee. All right, so I just want to think about opening up and almost like slightly sitting back into this hip here to open it up. Play around with your position, and you just want to think about inhaling into this open spot here. It's almost like a hip shift where you're sitting into the spot and breathing into that area to allow more expansion, especially if you find that you have more tightness in one area over another. Now, if you're ready for a little bit more, play around with it. You could take the block out of the way, and then you can kind of just sit back and sit here and breathe into the spot. I'm feeling a really good stretch in this position as well. And then as I continue to breathe into it. All right, so you would choose one of those exercises for your breathing after you've released. And then we're gonna come into a slight hip shift. So I'm going to grab my foam roller, because again, when we shift back into the hips, this helps to pull the femur back into the socket, helps to turn on those adductors for front pelvic floor activation, and it helps to open up the back of the pelvic floor. And so like I said, many women have back pelvic floor tightness, not front pelvic floor tightness. All right, and many women will need front pelvic floor activation while working through the back. All right, so you're going to place your hands and knees on the mat in a quadruped position. I want you to think about pushing your hands into the mat to push the body away with soft elbows. Neck is nice and long. like a turtle popping out of its shell. And you can think about pressing your fingertips into the mat. I don't have my whole hand, but I'm using pressure points in my body to kind of help myself. And I've got the foam roller in between my knees. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to think about breathing into, again, more breathing into those spots. And then as we exhale, we're going to squeeze the foam roller and we're going to lift one knee up at a time. And as we pull back, we're working into that iliacus, which is internally on the inside of the pelvis. We're pulling back to open up through the back of the pelvic floor while also engaging the front of the pelvic floor and those adductors, and we're pulling that femur back into the socket. So you should almost feel an opening here. It's very subtle, it's very basic, and you should feel those lower abs on board. And then you can gently put it back down, reset yourself, and repeat that a couple more times. One thing what we want to be very careful of is that we're not crunching here. Okay, so I'm not crunching in my abdomen. I'm staying nice and long through that torso, and I'm lifting the leg up and back towards the back of my pelvis. All right, so you would complete anywhere from 5 to 10 breaths on each side, 2 to 3 rounds. Again, play around with it, see what feels good for you, okay? So we've released the pelvic floor, then we've gone into a breathing exercise, and then we're going into shifting of the hips to continue to open up the back of the pelvic floor and get that femur to slide back into the socket. And if you have hip impingement, or pinching at the hips when you go down into a squat or any flexion of the hip, this would be really beneficial for you because it might be because your femur is shoved forward in the socket, okay? Once we've completed that, then we can go into some poses that will continue to help relax and open up the pelvic floor. So if you're doing all of this as a workout and then you want to finish with these poses, or you can do the release, the breathing, and then the hip shift, and then go into your workout and then top it off with these poses. That's how I would recommend that you put this all together. So my two favorite poses are a child's pose as well as a happy baby. So I don't have my pillow here, but I like to, again, compress the front. So if I had a pillow, I would place it underneath my abdomen here, and I would come onto the mat and just sit into a nice child's pose here. Now, a couple variations. So again, just like that deep squat, we're going to breathe into the back and allow the breath to get into this position. You can also place a pillow underneath your hips if you are a little bit limited in your range. You can also pop the toes up into this position, especially if you are pregnant and that belly wants to hang perfectly fine. And so we're just breathing into this position. And then my second position that I absolutely love, we're going to come down onto the back. We're going to come into a happy baby. So we're going to take our hands on the insides of our arches and we're just going to gently pull down and continue to open up like a flower as we just simply breathe. We're just breathing naturally here. We're not focusing on expanding the breath. We're just fully relaxing and just letting that pelvic floor open up. Now, if this position does not work for you, you can always come to the wall and you can place your feet on the wall, scoot your bottom towards the wall, and go down as far as it feels good for you and just sit here and open up. All right, so you decide what feels good for your body and do it consistently. Choose a couple exercises, do it consistently. More consistently we do it, the more likely we're going to see results. And so that's what we want. We want some consistency. So you can do these exercises before the full length videos as part of like your warm up, and then choose the stretching poses, so that happy baby and the child's pose as your cool down, so that you can put it all together, or you can just do it as a standalone workout.